Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. It says it's kind of a slow news weekend, and I didn't do an update yesterday. I figured I'd do an update to a video series I haven't updated in a little while, and that is Movie Spotlight. And today we are going to be looking at a 1980s classic in 1986's Chopping Mall. Now, Chopping Mall was one of those kind of niche. I don't even know if I want to call it a slasher, even though it has a lot of slasher tropes in it. It's kind of like a weird like robot monster movie. But the idea of it is basically this: there is this mall that has decided to implement these highly advanced robots. Again, this is a regular mall. There's actually the same mall I believe they used in the film Commando. And they want to put these robots into this mall as security measures, as like security guards. They don't have to hire security personnel, despite the fact they are extremely advanced. They actually look a little bit like the Hunter Killers from Terminator, the huge ones. So that's kind of interesting. But basically they're kind of like they're these little mini looking tank things, and they have the head from Alpha, the robot from Power Rangers, just sitting on top of them. And those there's three of them, and those robots basically run amok around the mall. Something happens in regards to their programming, and of course they begin killing people. Now the funniest part of the whole movie is the fact that the teenagers, who are in traditional 1980s fashion, are all played by 30-year-old actors. Are basically having an orgy in a furniture store, and then the robots attack. This movie has one of the best head explosions I've ever seen. This movie has some of the schlockiest and dumbest kills I've ever seen. The robots have lasers for whatever reason, and tasers and claws, and if you're implementing a security guard robot, generally I figure you wouldn't want it to be able to kill people. However, these seem to kill people with relative ease, which I find amusing. But it's one of those movies that it's even listed as a horror comedy, even though I don't think it was really marketed as that when it was coming out. But it's a goofy movie, and it's goofy because the acting is hammy. There's plenty of nudity. The premise is outrageous and stupid. Why would a mall spend what would perceive to be hundreds of millions of dollars in the mid 1980s to actually implement a robotic security force? That was the back in the days when they were just coming out with home PCs, and you're going to make a robot that drives around an entire building and can target and kill people. Also, for whatever reason, this movie has a gun store in a mall. Now, for anybody that was around back, in the 80s and the 70s and stuff like that, because I know Dawn of the Dead had this too. Can you put in the comments, did they actually used to have gun stores in malls? I know they used to sell guns in stuff like Walmart and Kmart and stuff like that, but did they actually have a gun store, like a legitimate gun store in a mall at one point? Was that a thing, or is that just a convenient thing they put in these movies? I've always just been kind of curious about that for anybody that knows. But ultimately, the film does a really good job at what it sets out to do, which is to make a kind of goofy horror film with a schlocky premise that's ridiculous and over the top. Because that's really how you kind of describe Chopping Mall. It's one of those films that it's so over the top in the idea that it's pushing forward, and the idea that there are they're not just killer robots, or it's not just a slasher movie in a mall. It's a slasher movie in a mall where the slasher is three killer robots running around the mall murdering people. It takes it kind of to a next level, and the kind of one of the best things about it is it doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't go on too long. A lot of those horror films back in the 80s, a lot of them kind of they hovered around the hour and a half mark. The actual cut of Chopping Mall, I believe, is 76 minutes, which is only an hour and 16. And I think that's with credits. So it's not a very long movie, but that ultimately I think helps the film because I think that if this had been an hour and a half movie, I think it would have gotten boring. I don't think they would have been able to keep it at the pace that it was. And as it stands now, I think it has a perfect pace for what it is. Some films just kind of need to learn when to end themselves. Kind of, it's like, yeah, people aren't going to be paying attention 3 hours into Batman v Superman if nothing's happened for 2.5 hours. It's that kind of an idea. But ultimately, Chopping Mall does a great job at what it sets out to do, and that's kind of why I love it, is because it knows what it is. It knows exactly what it is. It knows it's ridiculous popcorn horror splatter humor, and it does it flawlessly. and it just accepts it. It's one of those things like, they're not trying to be a high-end artsy horror film. They know what they're doing. They know they're having fun with this. And they even have the character of Walter Paisley, who shows up in a bunch of other like Corman related productions. And I can't remember the actor that plays him, but he's a janitor in this because he shows up in other things. There's kind of some weird crossovers in this that kind of nobody really understands why they happened. But again, this is one of my kind of favorite, like, just random 80s movies. By the way, also, the cover for this film, the baggie with the eye sticking out of it, that is an amazing cover. It reminds me actually a little bit, or the severed hand, I should say. I don't think it was an eye. And that's one of those other things that kind of works, because Trick or Treat did that. I can't remember if it's Trick or Treat or Trick or Treat. There was two different movies, but with each one of those titles. But I think the cover for one of them was Trick or Treat, and that was with it had a candy bag, and you could see like an eye through like a hole in the candy bag and stuff like that. Chopping Mall kind of did the same thing. And again, it does work for the movie. It does give it actually. It's not a very funny cover, which I thought it would be a little loopy, like they'd have like a hand or something coming out of the bag or something like that, or you'd see something poking out of the bag that would make you think of a body part or something. So I figured they would have gone a little funnier with it, but ultimately it still does work. And that's kind of really all I have to say about this. You can't really go too deep into a movie like this, which is why this is probably going to be a shorter movie spotlight than some of my other ones. But I really do enjoy this movie. It's 80s schlock at its best. And if you enjoy that, I would 100% recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. It would fall right in your wheelhouse. It's right there with films like Chud, and why am I drawing a blank on 80s schlock? Pretty much in most of the later Friday the 13th movies, most of the later Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It falls in with that kind of 80s kind of meta slasher humor that was going around. So if you really like that kind of stuff, if you're a Friday the 13th Part 6 person, you'll probably really love this movie. If you're not into 80s schlock or 80s horror, you're probably not going to like this. Just throwing it out there. But again, I always recommend it for a watch, because you never know if you're going to like something until you actually sit down and watch it. But I want to know what you think. Do you guys like Chopping Mall? Have you ever seen it? Do you agree with me that I think it's a good horror comedy from the 80s, or do you kind of like, it's kind of a shit movie? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Again, I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?